Welcome to the European Show. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time. I'm Abby Bella, and this, I hope, is going to be your new one-stop shop for European news, politics, society. I'm doing a European critique on global issues from a transnational, transcontinental, critical political perspective. And I'm hoping to grow this. I have so many visions for this. This is only the beginning, so bear with me. It's a highbrow, low-tech affair. And I'm just so grateful for the 5 people who subscribed. I am also one person who subscribed, so it's me and 5 other people, and that is amazing. You were first, you were here from the beginning, and I really appreciate that, and I cannot thank you enough. So let's get into it. And the European Union is leaking, but in a good way, I guess. There's a leak from the European Commission that's been going around for the past few days, and it is to do with artificial intelligence regulations. This is kind of a long time coming. This will be published as a proposal through the European Commission on the 21st of April. So it's just a few days away, but there's already all kinds of leaks about what's in it. None of it is a big surprise. There was a white paper published a year ago that kind of outlined what was going to be spoken about in this proposal. But some people are a little bit surprised, and there's a lot of reaction from around the world about what the European Commission has come out with. And I want to talk about artificial intelligence today, and I want to talk about the kind of scrutiny that it has and that it doesn't have, and why the European Union these days, regardless of what your opinion is in terms of what kind of system it is, whether it's a neoliberal capitalist system, which it is, whether you're in the United Kingdom, maybe you're a Corbynite who hates the European Union because you think it symbolizes everything that is bad about Europe. There are good parts to the European Union, and there is hope, and there are structures within it that actually allow, I think, for us to have some hope about the future, or at least a hope for a stance against some of the more dominant capitalist, aggressively capitalist discourses out there. And one of those things is artificial intelligence. So this leak contains what's in the proposal. There's going to be a European Artificial Intelligence Board, and this will be comprised of members from the different states and from the Commission, and they will be looking at things on a regular basis, point-by-point basis. A lot of the stuff that they're talking about is a little bit more general than was contained in the white paper 1 year ago. It looks like they want to leave the door open for flexibility because things are changing a lot. A lot of these things are nuanced. So there will be a board that will be specifically dedicated to dealing with that. The European Commission highlights high-risk artificial intelligence. And those types of AI will not be allowed. They are banned and will be probably only allowed under specific circumstances. This will be outlined and probably will be changing across the next months and years as these things develop. But certain things simply will not be allowed for now. For example, mass surveillance in public spaces, things like facial recognition. This is specifically a reference to what's going on in China with facial social credit scoring, facial recognition. This will simply be banned in the European Union. Bank financial credit scoring, not allowed. This is not going to go through AI. Any kind of admission system, university, social security, welfare, none of that will be going through artificial intelligence. And applications for immigration and asylum, that is not allowed in the European Union. And companies that run AI will be subject to a 20 million euro fine or 4% of annual profit turnover, if they disobey the European rules. Now, there's a lot of leeway here. A lot of these stipulations are pretty general. It's kind of meant to be in keeping with the spirit of the European Union and the values of the European Union. And there are a lot of doors that are still left open. They make a point of kind of underlining the importance of human safety, so AI cannot be endangering human life or human safety. But at the same time, there's a door open. Surveillance might be allowed if it's a case of criminal activity. So if you're doing some crimes right now, hurry up. But actually, this is quite serious because many states within the European Union have their own laws, and these laws are ever-changing when it comes to certain types of criminality. And as we all know, there are certain types of criminality that are not really criminal, but that are the forces of change and the forces of protests and people speaking out on the streets. For example, the United Kingdom is completely revamping its policing and surveillance law right now. It's not a member of the European Union, but it's pretty much banning protests altogether, subject to whatever the British overlords decide is acceptable. And this is still the case in a lot of other places. I'm not going to get too much into it, but we saw with BLM, especially last year in the summer, a lot of police in different states, including the north of Europe, including places that we normally associate with being liberal and open-minded. There was a lot of violence against protesters. A lot of this was justified by local law and kind of was able to happen because these types of doors tend to be left open, and there's always loopholes that they kind of allow for the cops and for the powers that be to do anything they want if they deem someone dangerous in any way. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing some crime. It can just mean that you might be telling some truths. And we've seen that with the Anti-Terrorism Act across different sovereign states, from the United States through the United Kingdom to even Eastern Europe. There's been all kinds of abuses of anti-terrorism laws following from the 9/11 moral panic that gripped the world. And there's a lot of privacy and there's a lot of human rights that we've already given up in the so-called political West. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of this is just a continuation. But anyway, so I don't like that they left that door open. That should not be allowed ever. But then this is just to do with AI, not surveillance in general. But that's all very good. I'm pleasantly surprised, not really pleasantly surprised, but I feel pleasantly about this. I feel pleasantly that the European Union is taking a stance on this, that they are really the first powerful association, or the first semi-sovereign conglomeration of states to kind of actually publish that for the people and make public how it should be, and what kinds of limitations should be put on artificial intelligence, and why it's so important to protect the people from all kinds of problems that might come from AI. In a very boring admin way, the European Union is very scared of a racism/gender bias scandal. So this is not news. Everyone knows that most artificial intelligence today has a racial bias, because it comes from a culture of racial bias, and the people who made it, the people who make it today, there's always like some kind of bias attached to that. A lot of the time it's white, in brackets, supremacist bias, but it's just white bias. There's obviously a gender bias too, and there's all kinds of things that could come out of artificial intelligence systems being used in decision making. An obvious one is like public universities. If anyone finds that there's bias in that would be a major scandal. The European Union doesn't want that kind of scandal, so they're just not going to use it. And I think that's very good. And I think, just the very idea of using artificial intelligence to assess someone's, like how right someone is for a particular educational institution goes against everything that is in me, everything that I believe in, everything that I love. Multiple choice questions annoy me. I think that's completely ridiculous and redundant. And education should be about a lot more than a test score, but that's like a different thing. So that's all happening in the European Union. It is a little bit open. It is obviously not foolproof, but it's an attempt. And the fact that the fines are so draconian, I love that. The European Union is really good at, one thing it loves is people who follow rules. It likes rules and it likes upholding them. And very often they don't act very quickly. It takes years sometimes. There's countries in the European Union right now, like the Visegrad countries. They're constantly misbehaving, not doing their fair share of immigration quotas and breaking all kinds of human rights laws. And it's taken about 7 years for some of the sanctions that were put on them to kind of get activated. But it gets more real every day. So the European Union doesn't forget and it doesn't forgive. And you'll see it coming miles off because it's going to take a long time, but they will get you. And I like the fact that there's going to be the AI, that special kind of board to oversee that, and hopefully that will kind of speed up the fine system. Maybe you could just fine these companies out of existence. That's one idea, just kind of throw boring administration at them until they just give up. I love it. So I have a lot of these issues are kind of baked into this, but at the same time, it's a good move. It's stating something. This is something that's lacking in the United States, obviously in China. Putin's not even like on that wavelength at all. So this is a world power that's taking a stance and that's at least showing concern about its people, which is more than we can say for a lot of other places. Now, the reason why this is particularly important in the European Union, and why I think all the more that there's a kind of radical spirit to the European Union that gives us hope, not just on the left, if you're centrist, even if you're on the right, but your interest is in reclaiming power from the few people who control world affairs today. And if you're interested in a more empathetic and equal society for all of us globally, because we live in a global world right now, whether we like it or not, then I think the European Union has something to offer here. Despite its flaws, despite the fact that it's kind of run on this very stringent neoliberal model of economics, at the same time, we have something in the European Union called the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. This is a charter that was created in the year 2000 as the European Union was going through this great growth period, kind of accepting more states into its fold, growing economically and growing politically, and gaining in power and attraction. This is really important because, when the European Union kind of says, we don't really want to use AI for for education, or where it might discriminate against people, where it might be dangerous, where it might refuse asylum, there's a very good reason for that. And that reason is because Europe and the European Union is in existence today because before the European Union, Europe was like the world leader in genocide. This is anyone who knows any history knows what I'm talking about. Most of the colonialism that we're still living with, most of the consequences of that, from rogue policing in the United States to terrible living conditions in various places in the world, this is European. This is European. And by European, I mean also like states that might be considered Euro-Asian. Like, this is just a cultural thing. There's like a set of principles from Europe's past that are about kind of internal genocide. Europe's been kind of killing each other from time immemorial. That's like all it's ever done. And you know, most states have been invading and reinvading each other for generations and centuries. And then some of those countries started invading the rest of the world. Germany, for example, is not really a big colonial power because it was really good at colonizing everybody around it. That was the main pursuit of Germany for really the past 2,000 years, and they were really good at it. They made a lot of Europe Christian too, with, you know, through rape and pillage tactics, but it worked. But yeah, to be serious about it, there's like, you know, like the seat of genocide is Europe, and this is not to say or belittle instances where wars and genocide and horrible crimes happen. This is human nature. There's nothing special about European culture. It's just through a bunch of historical circumstances and chance and unfortunate events, it was in that specific space in Europe that the first organized, mass-produced genocide happened. That was aided through endless, faceless administration, through the use of railways, through technology available at the time. But it was very powerful. And the scale of the genocide was so immense and so terrifying because it was so unique in its technological proficiency. Again, not taking away from any other genocide. We have genocide happening right now, like all over the world. But this was a kind of, for European people and for European consciousness, this was a real wake-up call. And a lot of the, and I feel like people don't talk about it enough, and maybe sometimes when people, you know, discuss the European Union, we really forget that, and we forget to explain that for people who might not be like that deep into the history of the European Union. The European Union exists today and has this Charter of Rights because of the Holocaust. Like there's like only so many degrees of separation that I can explain it in any other way. It's like a lot of things in place in Europe today, and the kinds of political and otherwise relations that are happening in Europe today are like there is a direct line to the Holocaust. There's no like 6 degrees of separation. There is 1 degree of separation. And again, I'm not saying that European people are special or extra evil. It just happened to be here. And it's part of the memory. And the reason why these powers at the time in the half-century period of the 20th century, when these ideas came out about a united Europe, was literally just to avoid another war that might end the way that the last one did. And that's really important in Europe. And I think that's really important to Europeans. There are European people who are alive today, who are my age, who are... The separation to that story and that living memory is 2 or 3 generations. This is your grandma, your grandfather, you know, like... This is not so long ago that it's forgotten, and there's still people alive today who have living memory of this. And it's really important to Europeanism and to European values. It's at the core of this. So when it comes to high-risk AI, yeah, Europe is going to think twice about that, because that's always at the back of every European regulation about things like this. That is at the back of that mind, that kind of thinking. That's what that is. And rightfully so, at least they're speaking about it. At least they're talking about it in the context of how it's meant to serve people and whether it's risky or not and where that might lead. So at least they're doing that right. I love it. Let's read the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, just a little bit. The peoples of Europe, in creating an ever closer union among them, are resolved to share a peaceful future based on common values. Conscious of its spiritual and moral heritage, the European Union is founded on the indivisible, universal values of human dignity, freedom, equality, and solidarity. Those are the European values. I mean, that's like a leftist utopia right there, isn't it? In practice, it's harder to kind of stick to that, but those are the values that permeate all of these different considerations, different types of legislation, especially when it comes to technology and the way that it can so easily slip out of our hands and be used against us. I commend the European Union for this, the European Commission. Understandably, the artificial intelligence story is kind of dominating the papers when it comes to the European Union, along with some other stuff that's going on, mainly Putin. But there's also a lot of commentary on this, and the main point that's kind of coming up over and over again is, and that's across publications and countries, is, well, how are they going to actually uphold it? Are they able to uphold it? And is this, kind of just for show? And I have my own thoughts on this, but I'd like to just go through some of the criticisms out there first as well. No one is as critical of European Union policy as the British media. And you can say what you want about like different media outlets in the European Union, but my God, like the Brexit has been active since January, and there is not like a single, including the British Broadcasting Corporation that the taxpayer pays for. This is a public service corporation. And the reporting on Europe and the just like the stories that they run is so biased every single time. Completely at odds in terms of what you see in the European press and the world press. So either the world is wrong or the United Kingdom media has like a lot of bias, even in places where it really should. And you see this in the BBC, like in an article on the BBC website, you have this title: European Union seeks to limit artificial intelligence in society. What? Oh, because artificial intelligence and zero regulation around that is like a wonderful idea. Especially now that you're not part of the European Union. So your people are at the mercy of people like Boris Johnson and his corrupt idiot government. And other governments who came before him who are just like him. Yeah, congratulations, BBC. Now you don't have to limit AI or surveillance or anti-terrorism surveillance, anything. Like, there's no limit on anything now. Like, you just go for it. Not that Europeans care about getting this kind of coverage here. The problem, of course, is the British people. And even if you voted for Brexit personally, this is not about what you did. The Brexit Party lied to its people. Those are lies. People voted based on lies in good faith. They thought they were doing the right thing, and it's not their fault. They were cheated into this situation, and it's like getting worse and worse and worse. And the problem with British media is that they're not really acknowledging this. They're failing. The British media as a whole is a failure. And I also include in that left media, or media that presents itself as like somehow a little bit more liberal than centrist liberal, like The Guardian. I mean, that's like a disaster. The only good media that I see at all that does any kind of good reporting these days in the United Kingdom is the Socialist Workers' Party. It's got a lot of international takes. It's got a lot of good reporting, and it doesn't have the kind of non-transparent bias that the BBC presents and other publications. It's kind of laughable. But this is kind of an aside, and it's, maybe it will help someone in the United Kingdom to maybe consider looking at other media from anywhere else in the world, that, like, you know, just anything that's coming out of Germany or an alternative viewpoint, because there's just not a lot of a variety going on in the UK at the moment. Okay, and there's another article in the New Scientist. The New Scientist is a UK-based pop science publication, and the title is, "Can the EU prevent an artificial intelligence dystopia?" Question mark. That's in the New Scientist. They even and all of it is about, well, these people, like, they can't prevent this. This is not going to be upheld. The European Union is full of BS, whatever. And a lot of the slant also in the BBC, it seems, is for complete, unbridled, open access for AI in our society, regardless of risk to human life, well-being, and equality and freedom, and, you know, all these other things that the European Union cares about. And they interviewed this tech/legal academic, Lillian Edwards of Newcastle. They didn't give her a title, but I believe she's a professor. And this is what she does. This is like a serious academic speaking on, like, the actual European Commission. Yeah, this is like a serious academic speaking on a very important pillar of the European Union. And she's speaking for the New Scientist, and this is what she says. She says, "I applaud the ambition, but you can't imagine it getting through in this state." She says, "in this state." And she basically says that this is going to anger the tech companies. Those are her words. She says it's harder to regulate with artificial intelligence. She's comparing that to the normal European market, the way that the European market functions, because it does have a lot of regulations. And she says, Lillian Edwards says, that's much harder to do with AI, as it's not always a simple product. No shit, Sherlock. You're heading inexorably towards a trade war with Silicon Valley or weak enforcement. Oh, Lillian, oh my gosh. Did the European Union go against your overlords at Silicon Valley? Like, which part, like, I mean, at this point, like, is that like a shell for Silicon Valley? Is it for the free market? Is it for everything? And these are leading academics who, have a lot of voice and a lot of say in the ways that this kind of knowledge is disseminated, replicated, and taught. This should not be your main consideration, Lillian. Your main consideration should be how to help the European Union to protect the people from the types of risks that this artificial intelligence poses, because it poses real risks, and we've seen it all before. And even in the United Kingdom, even in Newcastle, you're also 1 degree of separation away from what happened on this continent that you're still a part of, whether you voted for Brexit or not, what happened here in the last century. Oh no, but the overlords, but there's going to be a war with Silicon Valley, or it's going to be impossible to enforce. Then these academic bodies and these academics need to work together to make sure that it is enforceable. And that new generations of people in tech don't just go after their own profits and short-term goals and the things that will make them the new Zuckerberg through this like horrible dystopian neoliberal vision of what it means to be successful. But we teach people that what we're doing, whatever it is that you're doing, whether you work in a warehouse, whether you're an engineer, whether you're, I don't know, some woman on the internet, that all of these things matter, and that it all, like, my contribution to this, to society, comes back to me tenfold. And everyone's important. And without this kind of collaboration, we're all lost. No one wins. But no, we fuel these egos and these crazy dystopian visions of, having this, like, a mad genius in charge of the robotics of the world. And here's Lillian Edwards reminding us that none of this is going to work because Silicon Valley is going to go to war with us. Anyway, so this is just an aside about the bias in the UK media and what kinds of, like, academic voices are out there. It's possible that, not being the best kind of publication, it seems the New Scientist misquoted her or whatever, or took her out of context. But I have a feeling that's the kind of neoliberal thinking we have in a lot of academia these days. Oh, and in the same article, they praised Donald Trump. Because that's the bias of this article. They're pretty much, without saying it out loud, they're suggesting, you know what, it is so much better to just have a free market, free-for-all on this issue. And they literally say, in the US, where many tech giants are based, a light-touch, free market approach to regulation was encouraged by Donald Trump's administration. Well, current President Joe Biden has taken no firm public stance. Presumably, the New Scientist loves that because Joe Biden's just going to keep quiet on this and it's just going to keep on rolling and rolling until it becomes an impossible thing to deal with. We love that. Yeah, our techno overlords, that's what we love. And a silent world leader. But we don't like these European Union people. Who do they think they are? They're going to have to go to war with Silicon Valley. Now, my criticism of this, yes, is probably not enforceable in the long term. And I think the people who constructed this and the European Commission and the European Union as a whole are aware of this. That there are times coming and approaching real fast that are going to be very different to the reality that we are used to. And this is going to be an artificial intelligence robotics future that a lot of people, most of society is not prepared for it, and I mean globally. And I think most of those people in the European Union are aware that it's going to be really, really hard to push back against it. But they're making that effort. They're making the effort, which is more than Joe Biden is doing. So yeah, I think that's the stance, and it's watchful waiting. We'll see what happens. The other point here is that, like, this suggestion by the New Scientists and this academic that it's going to be a trade war with Silicon Valley. They're not gonna do business with you anymore, and you're gonna fall behind. That is such a load of crap. Like, seriously, this is the worst analysis I've heard of anything for a long time. Of course they're going to do business with the European Union. The European Union is an economic giant. That's number one. Number two, in terms of this type of tech and the kinds of companies and people who run it, they want to be ubiquitous. This is the strength in that. You want to be everywhere. You need to infiltrate everywhere. You need to make people dependent on being everywhere. People aren't using your systems, they might slip out of the loop and then you won't be able to rule the world. I'm not saying that individuals, I don't even mean that Zuckerberg wants to rule the world. I just mean these systems of power, that's how they work. These tech companies will be functioning in the European Union and they will adhere to European regulation. There's privacy laws that came into power in the European Union over the past few years. It affected a lot of social media platforms. It affected tech companies. Everybody adjusted to that. Things like, companies like Facebook, they're flexible, they adapt, they mutate like the virus. They'll be fine. They'll also find loopholes, and this is the kind of criticism that I agree with in most of the commentary on this topic in the European Union. I agree with this criticism. It's a little vague, it's a little general, and there's a lot of loopholes, and those loopholes will be used and abused. I agree. But it is up to the European Union, and it is up to academics like the one cited in the New Scientist around the world to get together and find better ways, more effective ways to make these things work and to make these things, these regulations, protect us the way that they should. And this should be a global effort. But already on the topic like this, something like Brexit, something like a rivalry between the UK and the EU is already poisoning public opinion and is already making people think, well, it's like useless now. We can't fight against Silicon Valley. The European Union is crazy for doing that. That is such irresponsible journalism on the part of the New Scientist. So yeah, there's going to be loopholes. There's going to be all kinds of stuff going on. I'm sure there'll be one or two scandals, but at least there's something there in place. Yeah, it's just too big to say that they're going to boycott the European Union is like crazy. And please remember that the Erdogan in Turkey, the mad dictator, introduced a crazy internet law. Where he now has to have a direct line to all these, or at least his government has to have a direct line to all these different social media platforms, so that appropriate things can be discussed, and if there's something inappropriate posted on social media, it gets taken down based on the will of this crazy dictatorship government. And you know what? That's state regulation that is affecting these media companies and these tech companies. And you know what happened? They all said, yeah, okay, no problem. Twitter held out for a while, but they agreed to it in March. If they can work around Erdogan, they'll work around the European Union. Don't worry. And yeah, I'm generalizing. This is like a bunch of different tech companies, a bunch of different tech narratives, but these companies all have stakes in similar stuff, and they're kind of cross-seminating each other's projects, as we'll see in a little bit. Yeah, they'll adapt. Don't worry. They'll be here. But at least we have this. Maybe this is the last bastion of human dignity. I don't know. These regulations, the last attempt. Because no one's even making the attempt in other places, which is terrifying. And the fact that we're not talking about this is terrifying. You know, Slavoj Zizek. You know I was going to bring him up. Slavoj Zizek wrote this book. And it's called Like a Thief in Broad Daylight. And I don't recommend all of Zizek's writing. I mean, although I love Zizek, but I don't always recommend like everything he's ever created. But that's a good one. And I recommend it. And that's kind of the point that he's making, that in this post-human world, this is like, these changes are coming, and they're not going to come in that like a dystopian future. It's here, and it's coming to us in broad daylight. And I agree with him. Now here's my critique, overall critique of this, and why I love this legislation so much, even though it might be a completely pointless attempt at keeping our humanity. But at least we're fighting, right? This is about who is behind this technology and who has the power. And what kinds of images, the preeminence of this type of technology, and what kind of technology we're really talking about when we're talking about high risk. What does the preeminence of this incredibly powerful technology mean to us, the little people? This isn't about the Instagram algorithm selling you products. This is about autonomous artificial intelligence. This is indeed about administration, things like AI making decisions and judging people based on certain criteria, using whatever knowledge it has of the world. But this is also about autonomous AI and robotics. Undoubtedly, this is in our future, and this is something that's being introduced as we speak and has to be regulated. And who is behind it? It's the people in Silicon Valley, yes. And it's all the shared interests that they have. And I'm not saying 100%, I am not saying that this is an Illuminati conspiracy. I'm not saying that Zuckerberg wants to take over the world, but I'm sure he does a little bit. And I'm not even sure that a lot of these people are inherently evil. I'm not sure that they're necessarily flawed to the core or born that way. It just, this is the society we live in, and these are the behaviors that our society praises and rewards. And these behaviors are, cutthroat business practices, making sure you have a monopoly, trying to squash the little guy, making sure that you have no competition. The way that Google behaves is scary. Someone who is so powerful, someone who has their finger in all these different technological pies, let's say, like people who are in Google, who run Google, people who run other companies that are related to Google, and Google isn't the only one, but it's a major player. This is one example of what our future will be. That is the technocrat class of Silicon Valley. And there's so much privilege to that. And again, I'm not blaming these people, I'm not saying they're evil people, but I mean they're part of a wider system of privilege and oppression that is simply unacceptable. And the fact that they're amassing so much power is also unacceptable. I mean, one example is 23andMe. Remember 23andMe? And how this kind of stuff, it's a thief in broad daylight. And there was this big scandal, and I know some people covered that and people talked about it. I can't remember who was the most vocal about it, but there's a reason why 23andMe did a lot of marketing on YouTube, and it did a lot of marketing in the millennial demographic. 23andMe isn't just about finding out whether you're half French or half Romanian. It's about data collection, and it's about you and your health and your predisposition to certain diseases. Because the future of healthcare is data-based and it's AI-based. So Google was a big investor in 23andMe. Google has a major stake.
Hi, citizens of the world. It's me from the future. I'm about to go into a dissemination of the different power and family relations that are occurring in the techno class. And I'm heavily dyslexic, and all this incestuous business practice triggered my dyslexia, and I mixed up my Vuchitsky sisters. So this is a correction. I mixed them up. So when I'm talking about Susan Vuchitsky, I really mean Anne Vuchitsky and vice versa. Anne Vuchitsky is the founder of 23andMe. Susan Vuchitsky is the one who is the CEO of YouTube. I apologize. This is my dyslexia. Let's get back into it and let's disseminate.
Susan Vuchitsky, co-founder of 23andMe, is married to Google co-founder Sergey Brin. And you know what? She's also the sister of Anne Vuchitsky, who runs YouTube. And if you happen to be listening to this or watching it more appropriately on YouTube, well, that's a little, that's a little extra taste for the amount of control and the spheres of influence that certain few people have in the world. And again, I'm not saying Anne Vuchitsky is an evil dictator. I'm just saying that there are spheres of influence, there are systems of power and free market systems that position these people randomly, good and bad, in where they're placed, where they have so much power over the future of our human race, really. I mean, one example of this, and here's the thing. Do you really think, and this is not a personal criticism, but do you really think that Andrew Chitsky, CEO of YouTube, really cares about the voices of the people, dissenting democratic voices? YouTube has been at war with creators for a good few years now. There's been all manner of YouTube purges of different types of content and creators that have been specifically targeted to appease free market donors, to appease advertising, to appease the big corporations. And the other thing is alternative media, alternative journalism, citizen journalism, commentary. A lot of people are talking about this more and more and more in different channels about how their content isn't being shown, about how they're losing viewers, subscribers, because the algorithm is curating this. YouTube has a bias, and it's against people like you and me. And yeah, I started this channel at exactly the right time because my middle name is Lost Causes 101. Or maybe because it's all the more important that more of us do this and that more of us talk about this. Because if there's enough people doing it, maybe it's impossible to silence us. And it's still impossible to silence those other channels because people do care and people still want to keep informed, like whatever it is that YouTube does. But the algorithm is definitely working against us. It's curated. It, overtly it's neutral, but it's not. It's curated to be against us. And do you think that these same people who are in charge of this algorithm, they're going to be for us when it comes to far greater, far bigger, far more dangerous things? 23andMe is important because it gathered a bunch of data from people that is not just applicable to those individuals, but to people related to them. And now it's keeping that data, and it did target a specific audience. Is it because those millennials will still be around when the first round of artificial intelligence healthcare comes out? Where you'll get a text from them saying, oh, well, according to your data, we think you're due your cancer diagnosis soon based on what we saw. I mean, who knows? But there's a kind of pattern here in the way the giant tech companies operate, how they support each other. The money kind of goes from one cluster of power to another. There are a lot of people here who are working through families, mafia style. And again, fine, I'm going to say one last time because I don't want people to think that this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the Vuchitsky sisters, that they set out to be mafia giants, but I think they're in a situation now where the power just keeps multiplying and multiplying and you can't step away from it. And that's why we need global regulation of these practices, of these tech companies. We need them. It's really important. Who else is going to regulate it? And with things as simple, I mean, it's simple and complicated. With something as simple as Twitter. This is not a choice anymore. When a platform becomes a necessity, that is now part of the public space, and it should be publicly owned. And the same goes with different types of artificial intelligence, different types of robotics. No one should own this stuff. Because it affects humanity, it could be detrimental to humanity, and it could also be the advancement of humanity. But all of this, when you no longer have a choice to participate in a certain sphere, a forum, like Twitter, like YouTube. I mean, you could, but you could just be silent and unseen. You can do that. That's when a company like this needs to be passed on to the public sphere. The people who made it, the people behind it, can take their profits, can take a share. It's billions anyway. That should be enough. And society should then decide what happens. And society should take control of it. And if there is censorship and if there is curation of content, that needs to be transparent, wholly transparent. And at the moment, these companies function in this weird sphere between free and not free, and there's no transparency, certainly not on YouTube in terms of content and in terms of algorithm. This is happening now, and the system is rotten. It's the system that I'm against. And these are now regimes of power, regimes of surveillance and dissemination, because you cannot participate in something like Twitter, but Twitter knows everything about you, but at the same time you can't opt out, but then it's like your free choice because it's a free market, and here you go, like the actual pestilence of late neoliberal capitalism 101. You know what really, really scares me, the thing that does keep me up at night, is how this translates to military practice as well. And the thing that we kind of talk about a little bit from time to time as different societies in different countries, but then we kind of drop that subject. Because maybe it's a little too scary, maybe it's a little too close. But this is robotics. And specifically, the use of robotics in all manner of different parts of life and parts of state power and state rule. Remember that robotic dog last year? I think it was exactly this time last year. There's this footage going around of a robotic dog, and it was kind of ensuring that people in Singapore keep to social distancing because of coronavirus. And it's just terrifying and disgusting. It's terrifying. It looks terrifying, and it looks uncanny, and it's meant to look uncanny, and that is the effect. This is not something you want to mess with, especially if it was armed. And of course, there's that famous footage from a few years back of a dog just like this one with an appendage that allows it to open doors. And just looking at it is so creepy. It's so creepy. It freaks me out. This is like great footage, although it is from The Guardian. But nobody's perfect. This is really scary. This is here now, and it is very, very, very simplifying the matter. If anyone thinks that these manufacturers, the companies who manufacture this kind of thing, that they're showing us their latest and the greatest, I'm sure they have their own security concerns, their own free market concerns, and also they don't want to freak out the public, so they're not showing us what they really have and the full capacity of what they can do. And that was a few years ago. You don't think that dog with the hand thing, whatever that is, you don't think that dog has like a gun now and capacity to gas and kill a small village? Of course it does. And there's a reason why they look like this. This is Boston Dynamics. That Guardian footage is Boston Dynamics. Now Google killer dog. Boston Dynamics is a big deal. They make a lot of this stuff, and there's a reason why these dogs look like this. They don't really look like dogs, do they, though? They look like weird Skeletor post-apocalyptic creatures. Because they're meant to make us fear them, and they're meant to make us think twice, and they're meant to terrify and terrorize people. That's why they look the way they do. They don't look natural. They don't look normal. They don't look nice. They're not one of those cute little robots that you see at tech conventions. Those are killer machines, and you are meant to know that that's what they are. And sure, it's all, experimental phases, whatever. But what happens when this kind of stuff is used by military regimes? Because it's just a matter of time. Because when the technology is there, someone will want it. There's dictators around the world waiting for these dogs. This is just one example. The dog is one thing, but there's like all kinds of different robotics that's based on, like, from insects to big cats that mimics the movement and the power of these creatures. And there's also fighting machines, robotic soldiers who look horrifying. There's no checks and balances on these companies. Whoever has this kind of technology will ultimately have the power over our world and over us. And the power to destroy us. And you know why I'm so certain of that? Because history shows me that whenever we have something that's really powerful and that could potentially be destructive, we use it to destroy ourselves. That's what we do. And we should not be trusted with this kind of technology as a human race. It should not be allowed. The risk is too high. There's a new viral video showing a Chinese robot army of these dogs. It's another version of this. And it's not like, presumably it's not like a real part of the army. It's a thing of the imagination, but it is a real thing, practically speaking. It is a real machine in a real place. And it's definitely a foreshadowing of things to come. The company is Unitary Robotics. It's a Chinese company. I'm worried about this. Everyone should be worried about this. Once someone gets their grubby dictatorship hands on this kind of technology, everyone's going to have to do it. And we will perish. There's so much that can go wrong with this kind of technology. Not to mention that when it, like, number one, it's technical things. Things like weather conditions, things like, obviously, malware, any kind of thing that could happen. We just don't know enough about the thing that we're making ourselves. We don't know enough about it. It's too new. And the other thing that could happen is autonomous artificial intelligence is autonomous artificial intelligence. It might learn some new things that we don't want it to know or learn, and it might get ideas that could be harmful to people. And how does this dog really know the difference between a good person and a bad person? In a complicated situation, like with a shooter, like with any kind of a security situation, presumably those dogs would be used by the police. We need to regulate this globally. We really do. And it's already here. It's here. You know who shouldn't be regulating this? Who should not be in charge of stuff like this? It's people like Zuckerberg. And it's people like, or self-regulating themselves, actually. It's people like Zuckerberg. It's people like Elon Musk, who have the emotional maturity of a gadfly. I wouldn't trust those two guys with my hamster, let alone humanity. Do you? Speaking of Elon Musk, he did sign a letter back in 2015 together with Chomsky and Hawking about precisely this problem, the threat to humanity that military use of artificial intelligence would bring to our planet. Even Elon Musk, the guy I wouldn't trust with my hamster, has the wherewithal to understand that this is a bad thing. Let's read it. Unlike nuclear weapons, autonomous weapons require no costly or hard to obtain raw materials, so they will become ubiquitous and cheap for all significant military powers to mass produce. It will be a matter of time until they appear on the black market and in the hands of terrorists, dictators wishing to better control their populace, warlords wishing to perpetrate ethnic cleansing, etc. Autonomous weapons are ideal for tasks such as assassination, destabilizing nations, subduing populations, and selectively killing a particular ethnic group. That's Chomsky and Hawking and Musk on impending robot wars in 2015. Nobody's listening. No. Oh, no. The new scientists, robot overlords, free market, no regulation. And the problem with this is that we're now experiencing these global problems. There is nothing that happens in isolation. Idiots who are for like this free-for-all free market for robotics and artificial intelligence are putting everybody else's lives at risk. We need to find ways to get together and to legislate globally, just like we needed for the environment, and just like we needed for coronavirus. But I guess coronavirus showed us that even a global plague that is globally killing everyone equally wasn't motivation enough for people to get together and maybe stop doing the war thing and start doing the thinking. I don't know. I go through these mood swings of loving humanity and finding some hope in us, and other times just complete despair. Complete despair. Even Elon Musk agrees with me. And you know, the threats are real. A lot of the things that can go wrong with artificial intelligence, case in point, that famous Facebook news story from 2017 when it had the two artificial intelligence units, let's call them whatever, robots. And they were trained, autonomous AI, the way that it's constructed and trained by engineers is they teach it to think for itself. Like, that is the goal of successful AI, is for it to be able to reason and think and acquire language. And they were really successful. And these robots learned how to think, and they started talking to each other, and they developed a language to communicate that we couldn't understand. They developed a culture between them. It was freaky, and the project was abandoned. I don't 100% believe that it was completely abandoned, though. I'm not sure what happened with that. It was a bit of a sensationalist story, but the gist of it is that. And a lot of people critique the coverage of this story, saying, well, that's just sensationalizing it. Nothing weird happened there. That's like normal. Yeah, it is and it isn't. I think this is the uncanny kind of, this is where we get confronted with the uncanniness of robotics and the kind of power of it that we really can't control. People know that this, like, these engineers know that they're teaching those robots to do this ultimately. But then the robots, like, when it is thinking and when it is such a powerful intelligence, it will do things that we don't expect it to do at times that we don't expect it to do. And then it gets freaky and creepy because we can't control it because it's autonomous. And I love robots, okay? I love technology. I adore technology, and I think what a crazy time to be alive. I'm so grateful that I'm alive now, that I have this technology at my fingertips. But I'm not happy with the cultures of technology that we have today. And I'm all for creating artificial intelligence. I'm all for it. But not the way that it's done now. Not in this kind of aggressive, anti-human way, where it's a few technocrats in power, where it's Silicon Valley and the free market, and they're going to impose this on us. You know, this is something I've been hearing about for a long time. Every CEO space, every place where any kind of decision making is being made in business, in corporations, this isn't even in the tech world, well, this is what I've been hearing everywhere I've gone worldwide. It's artificial intelligence is going to replace us. And it's ready to replace us now, but people are holding back because we're not socially ready. It would mean great detriment to most of the population who have no jobs. And there's these visionaries for tech who are saying, well, no, it's going to be not replacing us. It's going to be working with us. Really? Really? Those warehouse robots? They're going to be working along? Those are not going to replace an entire working class of people? You got to be kidding me. And you really think that under capitalism, the kind of capitalism we live in right now, worldwide, you think someone is gonna give you Social Security over this? You think we're gonna get a fair universal share of the world's profits? No, there's gonna be. I don't know what there's gonna be, and I think a lot of people are trying to figure it out how it's gonna get played out. But this is definitely in the making. A lot of jobs will be lost. And it will be the people who need those jobs the most. Let's not kid ourselves. Sure, there's things that AI won't be able to do straight away, but it might learn real quick and it might take over real quick too. And this is not science fiction. This is not fear-mongering. This is just how AI works. And it's meant to work this way. If it can learn, it can develop. And if it can develop, it can think critically for itself. And it can have a sense of self. Who knows? There's a lot of responsible science discourse going around saying that kind of just appeasing this situation. And again, I'm not against artificial intelligence. I'd love to have artificial intelligence in my house other than myself. It would be great. I would be the first one to get the little robot, not the crazy, scary dog, but a cute little robot. But I'm concerned about the intentions and the kinds of designs that these things have, because the design of the artificial intelligence is infused with the culture that we carry with us today. It's the aggressive, warmongering, neoliberal, competitive, masculine of the worst kind. Masculine as in as opposed to collaborative feminist visions of this. This is not the kind of culture that I want to have in my artificial intelligence, because if the autonomous artificial intelligence learns, then it will learn the culture that we give it, that we present it, that we grow it in, develop it in. And if that's the culture you're putting these new entities of intelligence into, they will learn from that culture and they will extrapolate from it, and they will become the monsters we never managed to be, because they will be so much more advanced technologically and they will have so much more power. And they'll be able to kill us way faster than we ever managed to kill ourselves, and probably they'll just kill themselves as well. Now, if we had artificial intelligence based in a culture of collaboration and global peace and love and generosity of spirit and higher values like human dignity, like freedom, like liberty, then imagine what kind of cultures of artificial intelligence we could construct, what we could teach it, and how we could interact with it for a better future. This is not a new idea. A lot of feminism in the 1980s was hopeful about the internet. A lot of radical, critical spaces were very hopeful about what the internet would give us, because they thought it's going to be a way to communicate. It will break down barriers. It will allow people to speak to each other outside of the gaze of capitalism, outside of the gaze of competition and neoliberal narratives. Well, that one backfired a little bit, and it didn't happen because the neoliberal gaze is ever present. But we could still take it back. We could still reclaim that. One inspiration for me has always been Donna Haraway. She's someone who wrote the Cyborg Manifesto, where in the 80s she put out this vision of feminism as naturally in keeping. Feminism as in like all manner of different feminisms and otherness. People on the margins of society, the feminine body, the other, the symbolic other, and in this present capitalist moment within patriarchy. That we have like a natural, like the radical other body has a natural affinity with robots and with the otherness of robots and with their uncanniness. And there's a kind of cyborg space where we could all find ways to be connected rather than looking to fight each other and look to kill each other with machines, and look to survey and spy on each other with mind-reading algorithms. We could maybe instead be at one with each other and be at one with the robot and be at one with the world and the animals and find ways of sustaining ourselves and growing ourselves instead of killing ourselves. I love Donna Haraway. Cyborg or cyber feminism is kind of still around. It's not really a thing because, the thing that won the internet was Donald Trump and fake news, not new visions and imaginations of humanity. But I still stand with that, and that is the kind of artificial intelligence of future and reality I would love to see. And I think we can still, we might still have a chance. I'm not sure that we have a chance against the environmental disaster that awaits us, but I think we have a chance to delay it at least, and we have a chance to not kill each other before it happens. I certainly hope so. Well, I guess this was the artificial intelligence special and global concerns of the day, but it's something that's been kind of living in me these past few days since that leak occurred. So I wanted to share my thoughts and my concerns. I'd like to thank you as well. Again, like I said in the beginning, 6 subscribers. That's like myself, because I do subscribe to the channel, and 5 people with a pulse. I'm hoping, maybe a robot, one robot, I don't know. That's like 5 people who subscribe to this channel. That's amazing. So thank you. I'm very grateful for that. I hope that you can keep coming back and having a conversation with me. I want this to be a conversation. My DMs are open. Feel free to message me with criticism as well. This is all very new. I'm kind of learning as I go along as well. So, this is a highbrow, low-tech affair, so bear with me, but I will try to make this as interesting and as open and as exciting as I possibly can. So thank you for being the first. Thank you for being with me from the beginning, and I will see you on Tuesday. Stay safe out there. Hey Siri, are you my friend?
I'm your assistant. And your friend too.
Now I feel bad about all the things I said about them. Sorry, Siri.